The stars did not care that the ship was dying. They burned with the same cold indifference they had shown for billions of years before the Ethon ever existed, and would continue burning long after the vessel finally broke apart into drifting metal and frozen bodies somewhere inside the silent black of the Perseus expanse. Commander Thel Varek watched the stars through the fractured viewport on Deck 3 and tried not to calculate how much time they had left, because the numbers never changed. And the numbers were terrible. Atmospheric reserves. 19 hours primary circulation. Emergency reserve. Perhaps 51 more if they shut down half the habitable decks. Food reserves. Irrelevant. The dead did not eat. The living barely wanted to. The Ethon groaned around him again. A deep metallic sound echoed through the damaged corridor beneath his feet, the low grinding scream of structural beams bending under stress they were never designed to survive. The sound had become familiar over the last 8 days. Every hour the ship sounded more tired, more wounded, like something enormous slowly drowning. The emergency lights flickered overhead, staining the corridor in dim amber pulses. Half the ship remained without power. The rear engine section no longer existed at all. Neither did decks 9 through 12. 116 crew members had vanished there in the first 30 seconds of the attack. Thel forced the thought away before it finished forming. Finishing thoughts like that accomplished nothing useful anymore. Behind him, Lieutenant Saran sat at the communications console surrounded by dead screens and exposed wiring. 4 of her 6 hands moved across the controls automatically, repeating the same distress cycle she had been running every 40 minutes for 8 straight days. She no longer checked whether anyone answered before beginning the next transmission. No one ever did. This is Coalition Survey Vessel Ethon, Registry Designation CSV 8821, she said quietly. Her voice had become mechanical with exhaustion. We are broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Vessel has sustained catastrophic damage following hostile engagement. 23 survivors remain aboard. Propulsion systems non-functional. Life support critical. Pause. The soft hum of static. Our coordinates are attached to this signal. Any vessel receiving, please respond. Silence answered her. Again. Saran released the transmitter key. The quiet that followed felt enormous. Not empty. Heavy. Like space itself was listening and had chosen not to care. Thel looked down the corridor toward the makeshift medical station assembled from overturned storage containers and emergency thermal blankets. 3 injured crew members slept there beneath dim lights. Or pretended to. Dr. Vares knelt beside one of them, replacing in 4-line with slow, careful movements that looked more ritualistic than medical now. Nobody moved quickly anymore. Moving quickly consumed oxygen. Moving quickly meant hope. And hope had become expensive aboard the Ethon. How many this cycle? Thel asked without turning. Saran checked the monitor even though she already knew. Nothing. Of course. The nearest coalition relay station was 11 sectors away. The nearest patrol route even farther. Officially, the Perseus expanse was considered low-risk exploratory territory. Officially, survey ships were safe here. Officially, none of that mattered now. The attack had lasted 13 minutes. Thel remembered every second of it with terrible clarity. Unknown vessels emerging from dark space without warning. No demands. No communication. No pirate markings. Just weapons fire. Precise. Systematic. Deliberate. First strike, engines. Second, communications. Third, life support junctions. The attackers had known exactly where to hit. Not random raiders. Professionals. Or worse, someone who had wanted the Ethon erased completely. Thel still did not know why. He wasn't sure he wanted to. A sudden alarm chirped across the bridge. Small. Sure. Different. Every surviving crew member looked up instantly. Saran froze at the communications board. Thel turned slowly. What was that? Her upper hands moved across the scanner controls. For the first time in 8 days, confusion crossed her face. Then disbelief. Then something else. Something dangerous. Commander, she whispered. The tactical screen flickered weakly to life. 1 contact. Unknown vessel. Distance, 9,200 kilometers. Massive engine signature. Not coalition. Not pirate. Not registered to any known military network in this sector. The unidentified ship drifted silently beyond the shattered viewport, half hidden against the stars like some enormous predator observing wounded prey. Thel stared at the sensor reading. Then at the dark shape barely visible outside. And for the first time in 8 days, the silence no longer felt empty. 650 words, mystery plus fear escalation. Nobody spoke for 3 full seconds. On a functioning warship, 3 seconds meant nothing. On the crippled remains of the Ethon, where every sound mattered and every system failure could kill someone, 3 seconds felt enormous. The unidentified vessel remained motionless beyond the viewport. Watching. Commander Thel stepped beside Saran's console, his claws tightening behind his back. Range confirmation. Saran swallowed once before answering. Approximately 9,200 kilometers. Margin of error ± 300. Our scanners are damaged. Configuration. That's the problem. Her lower hands moved quickly across the damaged console. I can't classify it. Thel looked at the tactical display. A single white outline rotated slowly against the black background of space. Large. Angular. Dense heat signature. Approximately 400 meters from bow to stern. No coalition registry code. No pirate signature. No active weapons lock. No communications ping. Nothing. Just presence. The ship sat in darkness without approaching or retreating, matching the Ethon's slow drift rotation with unsettling precision. Like it had arrived quietly enough not to startle wounded prey. Behind them, Dr. Vares emerged from the medical station. What is it? Saran answered without looking away from the display. I don't know. That frightened Thel more than he expected. Saran knew ships. She could identify engine signatures faster than most tactical officers could identify species accents. During 6 years aboard the Ethon, she had catalogued over 3,000 vessel configurations from across coalition territory. She said she didn't know. Then this thing truly did not belong here. The damaged bridge lights flickered again. Outside the viewport, the dark vessel shifted slightly against the stars. Not movement exactly. Adjustment. Tiny thruster corrections executed with impossible smoothness. Thel felt a pressure building slowly beneath his ribs. Not panic. Instinct. The ancient biological warning shared by prey species long before civilization existed. Something dangerous was nearby. Confirmed engagement record. Vorth Sector War. The bridge remained silent. Everyone in the coalition knew the Vorth War. 8 years ago, the Vorth Dominion had invaded 3 border systems expecting a rapid conquest campaign. The projections estimated human collapse within 31 days. The war lasted 14 months. The Vorth Dominion no longer existed. Thel remembered the aftermath footage. Burning fleets. Broken stations. Human ships still advancing through debris fields that should have forced retreat hours earlier. Coalition analysts spent years trying to explain how humans had survived. Most explanations failed. The tactical screen chimed softly. A transmission request. Every survivor on the bridge went still. Saran looked at Thel. Thel looked at the dark shape beyond the viewport. For one strange moment, he realized something with absolute clarity. The silence of empty space had terrified him for 8 days. But this new silence felt far more dangerous. Open the channel, he said quietly. 620 words, first human contact plus emotional shift. Saran activated the channel. Static rolled across the damaged bridge speakers. For a moment nothing happened. Then a voice came through. Come, female. Unhurried. This is Captain Elena Ward of the United Earthship Nightfall. We are reading your distress signal clearly. The translator rendered the words into Coalition Standard instantly, but something remained beneath the translation. A texture. A weight. Human voices always sounded strangely grounded to Thel, as though they belonged to creatures entirely unconcerned with the scale of space around them. Captain Ward continued. You've got significant structural damage, Ethon. Your engine section is gone and your rotational drift is destabilizing. We also detect life support failure progression. A short pause. Then. How many survivors? Thel realized Saran was staring silently at the console. Not frozen from fear. From surprise. The humans had assessed the ship's condition in seconds. He stepped forward. This is Commander Thel Varek of Coalition Survey Vessel Ethon. We have 23 surviving crew members. Multiple critical injuries. We are unable to maneuver. The human voice answered immediately. Understood. No hesitation. No political questions. No demand for identification clearance. No suspicion. Just understanding. Thel found that strangely unsettling. You are outside registered human territory, he said carefully. Yes. This sector is considered unstable. Yes. You approached anyway. Another small pause. Then the human captain replied with something Thel would remember for the rest of his life. You sounded like people who needed help. Silence filled the bridge again. Not empty silence. Different. Dr. Vares slowly lowered herself into one of the damaged seats nearby as though her legs had briefly forgotten how to function. Thel looked toward the viewport. The human ship remained motionless against the stars. Massive now. Predatory. But not in the way he expected. Not hunting. Guarding. Captain Ward spoke again. We're sending over a boarding team. Thel blinked once. You're coming aboard? Yes. There may still be hostile ships operating in this sector. We know. You could be attacked. Another pause. This one shorter. Commander, the human said gently, if somebody destroyed your ship once, they may come back to finish the job. Thel felt cold move slowly through his spine. Because he had been thinking exactly the same thing for 3 days. Captain Ward continued calmly. And if they do, they'll find us here. Not arrogance. Not bravado. Simple fact. That frightened him far more. Behind Thel, one of the younger crew members whispered softly. Gods. The human captain either did not hear it or pretended not to. We'll need status updates on your injured, she said. Can your port airlock still cycle? Saran checked quickly. Partially functional. Inner seal compromised. We'll work with it. Again that phrase. Not. That's impossible. Not. Too dangerous. Just. We'll work with it. Thel suddenly understood why coalition tactical analysts struggled to predict human behavior. Humans approached problems differently. Most species evaluated danger first. Humans appeared to evaluate action first. Danger came second. Boarding team departs in 6 minutes, Captain Ward said. Sit tight, Ethan. We're coming to get you. The channel closed. The bridge remained completely still. No one spoke immediately. Then Dr. Vares finally said, They're insane. Saran nodded faintly. Yes. But her voice carried something else now. Not fear. Something dangerously close to hope. Outside the viewport, the nightfall finally moved. The massive ship crossed the distance between them with smooth controlled bursts from its maneuvering thrusters. Thel watched carefully as the vessel rotated into clearer view. Angular armored plating. Heavy forward weapon arrays. Scarred hull sections repaired repeatedly instead of replaced. The ship looked functional in the same way Predators looked functional. Nothing decorative. Nothing wasted. Everything built for survival. The registry database had labeled it a response vessel. Thel now suspected that was human language for something far more dangerous. The Nightfall positioned itself beside the dying Ethan with astonishing precision, matching drift rotation perfectly. Not a single thruster correction wasted. Professional. Experienced. Prepared. Saran stared at the human vessel through the viewport. They came fast. Thel looked at her. What? She pointed weakly at the tactical display. The moment they heard us, they came immediately. Thel said nothing. Because suddenly he realized something deeply unsettling. The humans had not spent time debating whether to help. They had not negotiated. They had not calculated probabilities. They heard suffering. And accelerated toward it. 650 words, human competence plus alien observation. The boarding team arrived exactly 6 minutes later. Not approximately. Not close enough. Exactly. Thel stood beside the damaged port airlock as the cycling chamber hissed unevenly around them. Emergency pressure barriers trembled under the strain of failing seals, and cold vapor curled through the narrow corridor in pale clouds. The Ethan sounded worse now. The ship's frame emitted deep structural groans every few minutes, metal fatigue spreading deck by deck like fractures through old bone. Beside Thel, Saran checked the emergency seal for the 3rd time. It may not hold pressure during transfer. Then we move quickly, he said. That seemed to be the human philosophy toward nearly everything. The outer hatch unlocked with a heavy metallic thud. 6 figures entered through the vapor. Humans. Thel had seen recordings before. Recordings were insufficient. Reality carried weight recordings failed to capture. The humans moved with startling directness. Not aggressive. Not cautious. Purposeful. Every motion looked committed before it even began. The lead figure removed her helmet first. Dark hair tied tightly behind her head. Gray combat utility uniform. Sharp eyes already studying the corridor before the helmet fully disengaged. Commander Thel? The translator rendered her voice calmly. Yes. Captain Elena Ward extended one hand immediately. A human greeting gesture. Thel hesitated only briefly before clasping it. Her grip was firm. Warm. Alive. You kept 23 people breathing for 8 days, Ward said. That's good work. Thel stared at her. Not because of the compliment. Because of the certainty. Humans spoke with strange confidence during disasters, as though survival itself was expected until proven otherwise. Behind Ward, the rest of the boarding team spread through the corridor with astonishing efficiency. A smaller human woman carrying a medical case stopped beside Dr. Vares instantly. "You're the medic?" "Yes. I'm Dr. Lena Chin. Show me your critical patients first." No introduction beyond that. No ceremony. The human doctor simply moved. Fast. Another two humans carried stabilization equipment toward the failing power junctions without waiting for instruction. One of them glanced briefly at the exposed wiring hanging from the corridor ceiling. "Oh, that's ugly." The other human answered casually. "Seen worse." Then they started repairing systems Thel's own engineers had spent days trying to stabilize. Thel watched them carefully. This was the first thing Coalition reports always failed to explain properly. Humans behaved like emergencies were normal environments. Captain Ward moved deeper into the corridor beside him, studying the ship with quick efficient glances. "Whoever hit you knew what they were doing," she said. "Yes." "No ransom demand?" "No." "No boarding attempt?" "No." Ward's expression sharpened slightly. "That means destruction was the objective." Thel looked at her. "You reached that conclusion quickly." The human captain glanced at the burned corridor walls. "You don't survive long in frontier sectors without learning pattern recognition." Again that calm confidence. Not arrogance. Experience. Ahead of them, sparks burst from an exposed conduit. One of the human engineers cursed softly and climbed directly into the maintenance shaft without protective hesitation. Saran stared openly. "He's going inside the live conduit chamber." "Yes," Ward answered. "Is that safe?" "No." The human engineer's voice echoed from inside the shaft. "It's safer than exploding." A second later, the emergency lights across the corridor stabilized fully for the first time in days. Several exhausted crew members physically flinched at the sudden brightness. Thel heard someone behind him whisper, "How did they do that?" Another human passed carrying equipment crates nearly half his body weight. "Because humans repair things differently," Captain Ward said quietly. Thel looked at her. "What does that mean?" She considered the question briefly. "Most species repair systems by restoring original function." She gestured toward the corridor. "Humans repair systems by forcing them to survive a little longer." Thel stared at the stable lighting overhead. That explanation somehow felt more unsettling than reassuring. Farther down the corridor, Dr. Chin knelt beside one of the injured crew members while rapidly scanning his vitals. "Infections advanced but manageable," she said calmly. Dr. Vares blinked. "Manageable?" "Yeah. He may lose secondary respiratory function." "We'll stop that." Vares stared at her. Not doubtful. Confused. As though the human doctor had simply refused to acknowledge how serious the situation was. Captain Ward noticed. "She's not underestimating the problem," the human captain said quietly. "That's just how human medics sound." A sudden alarm pulsed faintly across the ship. "Structural integrity warning. Deck 7 stress failure approaching critical." Thel tensed automatically. Captain Ward didn't. Instead she touched her earpiece calmly. "Kowalski status." The engineer's voice answered immediately through static. "Power grid stabilized. Structural support temporary but holding." "How long?" "Depends how optimistic you're feeling." "Kowalski." Pause. 6 hours minimum." "Good enough." The channel closed. Thel stared at her again. "Good enough?" Ward met his gaze evenly. "Commander, 6 hours ago your ship was dying alone." She gestured toward the busy corridors now filled with moving humans, stable lighting, active medical equipment, and controlled urgency. "Now it isn't." 650 words, mystery deepens plus threat setup. The humans worked for nearly 2 hours without slowing down. Thel watched them move through the ethon with a level of controlled urgency that bordered on unnatural. Nobody shouted. Nobody panicked. Nobody wasted movement. And somehow that made them feel more dangerous. The temporary stabilization grid now held across 4 surviving decks. Emergency heaters functioned again. Oxygen circulation had improved by 11%. 11%. Thel's engineers had spent 8 days fighting for fractions. The humans arrived and dragged the ship back from death in under 2 hours. It did not feel real. Captain Ward stood beside the shattered viewport studying a holographic projection floating above her wrist console. Survey coordinates. Attack vectors. Weapon impact patterns. She had been reviewing them silently for 20 straight minutes. Lieutenant Saran finally spoke. You think they'll come back? It was not phrased as a question. Ward answered anyway. Yes. No hesitation. Thel folded his upper arms behind his back. Why? The human captain enlarged the tactical overlay. Red lines spread across the projection showing the original attack sequence. Because this wasn't piracy. Her finger traced the first strike. Engines. Second. Communications. Third. Life support. Another series of marks appeared across the damaged schematic. Then they targeted rotational stability and structural support junctions. Ward looked up. That's not random destruction. That's execution. The bridge stayed quiet. Thel already knew she was right. Hearing it spoken aloud made it worse. Lieutenant Saran studied the display carefully. The attackers ignored cargo storage. Yes. They ignored data archives. Yes. They never boarded. Ward nodded once. Which means they didn't care about profit. Dr. Vares looked uneasy now. Then what did they care about? The human captain zoomed the holographic map outward until the surrounding star systems appeared. Then she highlighted the survey zone where the Ethon had been operating before the attack. What exactly were you surveying out here? Thel answered carefully. Unusual gravitational distortion readings. How unusual? We don't know yet. Ward looked at him steadily. That's not a normal answer from a survey commander. Because it wasn't. Thel glanced briefly toward Saran. Then back at the human captain. 3 weeks ago long-range coalition scanners detected intermittent dark space fluctuations in this sector. Ward's expression sharpened immediately. How large? Large enough to trigger military observation requests. Now the humans exchanged looks. Fast, silent, efficient. Thel noticed that human crews communicated enormous amounts of information without words. One glance between Captain Ward and Lieutenant Marcus Dax seemed to complete an entire tactical discussion instantly. Dax crossed his arms beside the weapons console. You think somebody found something out here? We think somebody found something first, Thel corrected quietly. Silence. The damaged ship groaned around them again. Outside the viewport, stars drifted slowly across fractured glass. Captain Ward looked toward the darkness beyond the Ethon. Veridan raiders operating this far out doesn't make sense unless they're protecting something valuable. Thel looked at her. You identified the attackers already? Ward blinked once. The weapon signatures were obvious. That answer somehow felt deeply human. Not boasting. Just fact. Dr. Vares shifted uneasily beside the medical station. If the Veridan clans are involved, then this sector is already compromised. No, Lieutenant Dax said quietly. Everyone looked at him. The human weapons officer stood studying the tactical projection with disturbing concentration. This sector isn't compromised yet. Pause. It's becoming compromised. Thel felt cold spread slowly through his chest. That wording mattered. Because it implied escalation. Not random violence. Preparation. Captain Ward touched her earpiece. Nightfall Bridge, passive scan update. A voice answered immediately. Long-range sweep complete, Captain. No active contacts yet. Yet. The humans used that word often. Not optimistic. Prepared. Ward turned back toward Thel. How many coalition survey ships operate in this region? 7. And yours was the furthest out? Yes. Dax muttered something softly. Thel caught only part of it. Testing response time. Captain Ward heard the full sentence. Her expression darkened slightly. You think this was a probe? Dax nodded once. Maybe. Dr. Vares looked between them. A probe for what? The human weapons officer finally looked up. For how long ships disappear out here before somebody notices? Silence filled the bridge instantly. Heavy silence. The kind that changed the emotional temperature of a room. Thel suddenly remembered the original distress signal. 8 days unanswered. 8 days drifting in darkness while coalition relays remained silent. 8 days before a single human ship responded. Captain Ward slowly straightened beside the viewport. What were your exact survey coordinates before the attack? Thel gave them. The human captain entered the data into her wrist console. The screen processed for 2 seconds. Then her expression changed. Only slightly. But enough. Thel noticed immediately. What is it? Ward stared at the display. Then finally said. The Nightfall was sent to this sector 3 weeks ago. The bridge became perfectly still. Why? Saran whispered. The human captain looked out into the stars again. Because Earth picked up the same dark space anomalies you did. 670 words, massive mystery reveal plus rising dread. Nobody spoke for several seconds after Captain Ward's statement. Even the humans went quieter. Thel noticed that immediately. Not fear. Focus. Human crews became still the way predators became still before violence. The same anomaly? Saran asked carefully. Ward nodded once. 3 weeks ago, Earth deep-range observatories picked up repeated dark space distortion spikes in this sector. She enlarged the holographic projection again. At first we thought it was a collapsed transit corridor. Lieutenant Dax leaned against the weapons console. Then the pattern changed. Thel looked at him. How? Dax zoomed the projection inward. The distortion markers formed a rough spiral pattern through the outer systems of the Perseus expanse. Natural anomalies don't move with intention, the human officer said quietly. A cold feeling spread through the bridge. Because every person there immediately understood the implication. Intentional movement meant intelligence. Dr. Varese folded her lower hands tightly together. You think something created the disturbances? Captain Ward answered carefully. We think something is using them. Thel stared at the projection. The spiral pattern extended across dozens of systems. Too large for pirates. Too organized for random instability. Something had been moving through the outer sectors for months without official detection. Something powerful enough to trigger dark space distortions. Lieutenant Saran spoke softly. The Veritan clans discovered it first. Probably, Ward agreed. And now they're eliminating witnesses. Dax nodded once. Or delaying information spread until somebody pays enough. Thel looked sharply toward him. You believe this is about profit? The human officer shrugged faintly. Everything eventually becomes about profit, territory, or survival. Dr. Varese looked increasingly unsettled. You speak as though this is normal. Captain Ward gave a tired smile. It's not normal. Pause. But it is familiar. That sentence lingered heavily in the damaged bridge. Because humans said things like that too casually. As though encountering terrifying unknowns was simply another category of operational difficulty. The bridge lights dimmed briefly before stabilizing again. Somewhere deeper in the ship, stressed metal screamed softly through the corridors. The Ethon was still dying. Just slower now. Ward turned toward Thel. I need your full survey logs. The Coalition commander hesitated. Not because he distrusted the humans. Because the survey data technically belonged to Coalition intelligence now. Protocol mattered. Captain Ward noticed the hesitation instantly. Commander, she said calmly, if somebody is systematically erasing ships out here, then protocols are already dead. Thel realized she genuinely believed that. Humans treated rules differently than Coalition officers did. Most species viewed protocol as structural safety. Humans viewed protocol as conditional. Useful until survival required something else. After several seconds, Thel transferred the survey files. Ward's wrist console lit up immediately. Dozens of data streams unfolded across the holographic display. Gravitational anomalies. Radiation spikes. Dark space turbulence patterns. Then something else appeared. Dax frowned. Hold on. The human weapons officer stepped closer. What is that? Thel followed his gaze. A faint repeating energy signature pulsed beneath the anomaly readings. Small. Consistent. Artificial. Saran's upper hands froze over her console. That signal wasn't in the official scans. Thel felt cold move slowly through his chest. Because she was right. Someone had removed it. Captain Ward's expression hardened instantly. Your survey data was altered before transmission. Impossible, Varese whispered. No, Dax said quietly. Not impossible. He enlarged the hidden signal. The repeating pulse sharpened into recognizable intervals. A beacon. Ancient. Massive. Still active. The bridge became perfectly silent. Thel stared at the signal pattern. His instinct screamed now. Not fear exactly. Recognition. The feeling intelligent creatures experienced when standing too close to something far larger than themselves. Captain Ward spoke carefully. How old is this frequency architecture? Saran ran the comparison automatically. Then stopped breathing. Commander. Thel already knew from her voice. How old? She looked at the display in disbelief. Approximately 12,000 years. Nobody moved. Even the humans went completely still now. 12,000 years. Older than the Coalition. Older than every known interstellar civilization except perhaps the extinct precursor races. The dark space anomaly suddenly felt much worse. Dr. Varese whispered softly. That's impossible? No, Captain Ward said quietly. Impossible things don't leave power signatures. The human captain stared at the hidden beacon signal for a long moment. Then she touched her earpiece. Nightfall Bridge. Full active scan sweep. A voice answered immediately. Captain? Scan everything. Pause. Everything? Ward's eyes never left the projection. Yes. Thel looked at her carefully. You think something is out there? Captain Ward answered without hesitation. I think something has been out there for a very long time. At that exact moment, alarms exploded across the Nightfall's tactical systems. Every human on the bridge reacted instantly. Not panic. Acceleration. The tactical display flashed red. 1 contact. Then 3. Then 7. Ships emerging from dark space at extreme range. Lieutenant Dax stared at the incoming signatures. Then quietly said the one sentence nobody aboard the bridge wanted to hear. That's not a raider patrol. 720 words, terror escalation plus human fearlessness. The tactical display filled with red markers. 7 ships. No. 9. The count kept climbing as more dark space signatures appeared across the outer edge of sensor range. The bridge lighting shifted automatically into combat status. Amber became crimson. Warning tones pulsed through the nightfall with sharp mechanical precision. Thel felt his breathing slow involuntarily. Not calm. Because the incoming fleet made no sense. The sensor profiles were wrong. Every vessel carried different engine signatures. Different hull Massachusetts. Different weapon architecture. Pirate fleets did not operate like this. Pirates valued consistency. Efficiency. Supply compatibility. These ships looked assembled from entirely separate military doctrines. Like something had forced rival predators into cooperation. Lieutenant Dax studied the tactical screen carefully. Well, he muttered. That's concerning. Thel stared at him. Only humans could look at an impossible hostile fleet and describe it like unexpected weather. Captain Ward's voice cut cleanly across the bridge. Count. Tors answered instantly from navigation. 12 confirmed contacts. Another pause. Correction. 14. Thel felt the deck vibrate softly beneath his feet as the Nightfall's weapon systems powered fully online. A deep mechanical hum rolled through the ship. Heavy weapons charging. The sound felt less like machinery and more like something waking up. Captain Ward remained perfectly still at the center of the bridge. Identification. Saran worked the scans rapidly. Multiple configurations. Veridan signatures confirmed on 4 vessels. Only 4. Yes. Dax frowned. That's bad. Thel looked toward him. Why? Because mixed fleets mean coordination. Another contact appeared. Then another. 18 ships now. Dr. Vares whispered softly. Gods. Captain Ward ignored the growing numbers completely. Range. Extreme long range. Approximately 23 minutes until engagement window. Formation. Tors enlarged the tactical spread. The incoming ships were not attacking directly. They were surrounding the sector. Slowly. Methodically. Cutting off escape vectors. Thel suddenly understood. They're containing something. Nobody answered immediately. Because every person on the bridge had reached the same conclusion. The fleet was not here for the Ethon. Or the Nightfall. Those were secondary concerns. Whatever existed inside the anomaly zone mattered far more. Captain Ward touched the tactical display. Magnify center vector. The projection zoomed inward. And the bridge became silent again. Something enormous sat hidden behind the approaching fleet. Not fully visible. Only fragments appearing through distorted sensor interference. A shadow larger than several capital ships combined. Thel felt instinctive terror hit him so hard his lower limbs tightened automatically. The shape did not look like a ship. It looked manufactured in the same way storms looked manufactured. Wrong scale. Wrong geometry. Wrong presence. Saran's voice trembled slightly. Size estimate, unavailable. Unavailable? Thel repeated. That's what the scanner says. Dax stared at the distortion quietly. Well? The human officer folded his arms. That explains the beacon. Captain Ward finally spoke. Unknown vessel profile? The tactical computer answered automatically. No match found. Thel heard one of the younger coalition survivors whisper. That thing can't be real. Captain Ward looked at the tactical projection for a long moment. Then calmly asked the most horrifying question possible. Do we think it's active? Thel turned toward her in disbelief. That was the question humans asked? Not. What is it? Not. Can we survive? Not. Should we run? Just. Is it active? Lieutenant Dax rubbed his jaw slowly. If it wasn't active, they wouldn't need 18 ships guarding it. Nobody argued. Because the logic was terrible. And correct. The bridge speakers crackled suddenly. An incoming transmission. Unknown origin. Not Veridan. Not Coalition. The signal carried strange distortion beneath it. Ancient static. Like listening to machinery speaking through deep water. Captain Ward accepted the transmission immediately. The voice that emerged did not sound fully organic. It sounded layered. Multiple tones speaking simultaneously beneath the translator. Unauthorized vessels have entered restricted perimeter. Every person on the bridge froze. The voice continued. Withdraw immediately. The tactical screen flickered violently. The hidden massive shape shifted slightly behind the surrounding fleet. Not movement. Awareness. Thel suddenly realized something terrifying. The unknown vessel had known they were here the entire time. Captain Ward remained calm. Identify yourself. Pause. Then. Custodian network remains active. The translator struggled briefly. Quarantine must be maintained. Dr. Vares whispered. Quarantine. The ancient voice continued. Organic civilizations are not authorized to proceed. The transmission ended abruptly. Silence filled the bridge. Heavy silence. The kind that changed people permanently. Then Lieutenant Dax quietly broke it. Well? He looked toward Captain Ward. That's probably very bad. Captain Ward nodded once. Yes. Another pause. Then the human captain asked the question that made Thel finally understand humanity completely. How fast can we get closer? 760 words, humanity revealed through action. The bridge went completely silent after Captain Ward's question. Not because anyone misheard her. Because everyone heard her perfectly. Thel stared at the human captain. Beyond the viewport, 18 hostile ships surrounded a structure older than recorded civilization itself. An impossible machine hidden in deep space. An active quarantine zone guarded by multiple fleets. And the human response was, how fast can we get closer? Lieutenant Torres answered immediately from navigation. Depends how reckless you're feeling. Moderately. Then 7 minutes to perimeter range. Dax looked up from the tactical console. If we go closer, they'll engage. Ward nodded once. Yes. Thel stepped forward sharply. Captain. She looked at him calmly. Thel realized something deeply unsettling in that moment. Humans did not react to fear the way coalition species did. Most intelligent civilizations evolved survival through avoidance. Humans evolved through confrontation. Not because they enjoyed danger. Because somewhere deep inside their psychology, impossible situations triggered momentum instead of paralysis. The fleet outnumbers you 18-1, Thel said carefully. Currently. That answer made no logical sense. Which somehow made it more human. Ward enlarged the tactical projection again. Look at their positioning. Thel forced himself to focus. The surrounding ships maintained wide perimeter spacing around the ancient structure. Not attack formation. Containment formation. Lieutenant Dax pointed toward the display. They're scared of getting too close. Dr. Vares stared at him. You reached that conclusion from spacing patterns? Dax shrugged faintly. Fear changes geometry. Again that impossible human pattern recognition. Captain Ward folded her arms. The fleets aren't protecting the structure from outsiders. She pointed toward the perimeter lines. They're protecting themselves from whatever's inside. Silence. Thel looked back toward the distorted shadow hidden behind the fleet. The thing barely appeared on scanners at all. Only fragments. Impossible angles. Shifting gravitational readings. Every instinct in his body screamed that intelligent creatures were never supposed to approach something like that. Humans apparently disagreed. Ward touched her earpiece. All combat stations ready. Voices answered immediately across the bridge network. Rail systems hot. Shield arrays active. Lance capacitors charged. Drive cores stable. The efficiency was terrifying. Not hurried. Prepared. Like this crew had done impossible things before. Thel suddenly remembered the Vorth War again. 14 months. Entire fleets destroyed. Humans continuing forward anyway. Captain Ward looked toward him. Commander, how mobile are your surviving crew? Thel blinked once at the sudden shift. Most are aboard already. Good. You intend to leave? No. Ward zoomed the tactical map further inward. We're going to identify what's hiding in this sector. Thel stared at her in disbelief. With 18 hostile vessels surrounding it? Yes. That is not rational. No, Ward agreed calmly. Probably not. The human captain looked back toward the dark shape beyond the fleet. But something erased multiple ships to keep this hidden. Pause. Which means somebody already decided this matters. Thel felt a strange realization forming slowly in his thoughts. Humans treated mystery differently too. Most species avoided unknown dangers until sufficient data existed. Humans moved toward unknown dangers specifically because data did not exist. Lieutenant Dax suddenly straightened. Contact movement. Every eye turned toward the tactical display. 3 Veridan vessels broke formation and accelerated directly toward the nightfall. Weapons charging. Fast attack vector. Captain Ward remained perfectly calm. Hail them. The channel opened instantly. A Veridan commander appeared on the main screen. Tall. Armored. Expression cold with absolute certainty. Human vessel, the Veridan said sharply. Withdraw immediately. Ward leaned slightly against the command console. No. The Veridan commander blinked once. As though the answer itself had violated expectation. You are entering restricted territory under active containment authority. Noted. Withdraw. No. The Veridan's expression hardened visibly now. You do not understand what exists here. Captain Ward's eyes narrowed slightly. That's exactly why I'm staying. The bridge became very quiet. Because even the Veridan officer looked momentarily unsettled by that response. Thel finally understood the core truth about humanity. Humans were not fearless. That was the mistake everyone made. Humans absolutely felt fear. The difference was far worse. Fear did not automatically control them. The Veridan commander leaned forward. If the custodian awakens, entire systems may die. The bridge temperature suddenly felt colder. Custodian. Not structure. Not station. Not machine. A name. Something alive. Captain Ward's expression changed slightly for the first time since arriving aboard the Ethon. Not fear. Recognition. She looked toward Dax. Dax looked back. Again that silent human communication passed between them instantly. Then Ward spoke softly. That's not containment fleet positioning. The Veridan commander went still. Ward pointed toward the tactical display. You're not guarding it. Pause. The human captain's voice hardened. You're waiting for it to wake up. Silence. Absolute silence. And in that silence, the ancient structure moved. Not fully. Not violently. Just enough. The distorted shadow beneath the fleet slowly rotated in deep space, revealing the faint outline of something impossibly massive buried beneath layers of dark metal and ancient damage. Then every alarm aboard the Nightfall detonated simultaneously. The tactical AI spoke in a flat mechanical voice. Unknown energy surge detected. Source activating. And for the very first time since Thel met them, he saw the human smile. 900 words, peak terror plus human war instinct. The ancient structure opened its eyes. That was the only way Thel could describe it afterward. Not literally. The thing had no visible face. No biological features. No recognizable anatomy at all. But something deep within the impossible black structure ignited with sudden cold blue light, and every creature aboard the Nightfall felt the same instinctive realization simultaneously. Something had just become aware of them. The tactical displays exploded with warnings. Gravitational distortion spiked, dark space instability rising, unknown power signature increasing. The bridge lights flickered violently. Several consoles failed outright. Thel grabbed the edge of his station as the deck beneath them vibrated with low-frequency force. Not impact. Pressure. Like reality itself had suddenly become heavier. Lieutenant Torres looked up sharply from navigation. Drive systems destabilizing. Compensate, Ward said instantly. I'm trying. Outside the viewport, the surrounding fleets reacted immediately. And for the first time since detecting them, the Veridan ships looked afraid. Actually afraid. Not tactical caution. Not combat awareness. Fear. The perimeter formation shattered as vessels accelerated away from the awakening structure in chaotic vectors. Thel stared at the tactical display in disbelief. They're retreating. Dax shook his head slowly. No. He enlarged the fleet trajectories. They're running. A pulse erupted from the custodian. Silent. Invisible. But devastating. 3 nearby ships vanished instantly from tactical sensors. No explosion. No debris. Just absence. Thel's breathing stopped. The bridge became perfectly still. Then another pulse expanded outward through space. This time visible. A massive blue distortion wave rolled across the sector like a fracture moving through glass. One Veridan cruiser caught the edge of it. The ship folded inward. Not destroyed. Compressed. Hull plating bent like soft metal under impossible pressure before the vessel collapsed into a twisting cloud of debris and light. Dr. Varese whispered softly, "Gods preserve us." Captain Ward did not move. Her eyes remained fixed on the tactical display with terrifying concentration. Pattern? Dax scanned rapidly. The pulses are targeting powered mass concentrations. Thel looked toward him sharply. You identified that already? Mostly because we're still alive. Another pulse detonated outward. More ships died. The containment fleet fully collapsed now. Some vessels fled deeper into dark space. Others fired wildly at the custodian itself. The attacks accomplished nothing. Energy weapons vanished against invisible distortion fields surrounding the ancient structure. Thel stared at the impossible thing rotating slowly beneath the stars. The custodian was enormous. Not ship-sized. City-sized. Sections of black armored structure extended outward in layered rings around a central core glowing with deep blue light. Ancient damage scarred the surface. Entire sections looked shattered by weapons impacts old enough to predate civilizations. And yet, it still functioned. After 12,000 years. Captain Ward finally spoke quietly. It's autonomous. Dax nodded once. Looks like an old containment intelligence. Containing what? No one answered. Because suddenly that question felt vastly more dangerous than the custodian itself. Another pulse built within the glowing core. The tactical alarm screamed. Tors looked up sharply. Energy spike increasing. Thel felt terror hit him properly now. Not intellectual fear. Biological fear. Every instinct screamed, run. The humans accelerated instead. Captain Ward's voice cut through the bridge instantly. Tors, attack vector. Thel turned toward her in disbelief. Attack. We need closer scans. That thing is destroying fleets. Yes. You want to move toward it? Ward looked at him calmly. If we run now, we learn nothing. Thel finally understood why humanity terrified the galaxy. Not because humans lacked fear. Because somewhere deep inside their species, curiosity competed directly against survival instinct. And sometimes won. The nightfall surged forward. Art. Human engines roared through the hull as the ship accelerated directly through the collapsing battle zone. Thel grabbed his console again as inertial compensators struggled briefly under the maneuver. Outside the viewport, fleeing ships streaked past them in panic. One Veridan cruiser transmitted frantic warnings across open channels. Do not approach the core. The message ended in static as another distortion pulse erased the vessel from existence. Thel felt physically sick. And beside him, Lieutenant Dax grinned. Actually grinned. Not from madness. Focus. Humans under extreme pressure became sharper. Faster. More alive. Range? Ward demanded. Closing fast. The custodian turned slowly toward them. Blue light intensified across massive rotating structures beneath the armor layers. The ancient machine was noticing them specifically now. Thel heard Saran whisper beside him. It sees us. The tactical AI suddenly flashed new readings. Energy lock detected. Every alarm on the bridge detonated simultaneously. Tor shouted. It's targeting us. Ward didn't flinch. Dax. Already on it. The human weapons officer's hands moved across the controls with impossible speed. Rail systems charged. Lance arrays rotated. Missile bays opened. The Nightfall transformed instantly from rescue vessel into warship. And suddenly Thel understood something else about humanity. Humans did not separate compassion from violence. The same species that crossed sectors to rescue strangers could become terrifyingly efficient killers seconds later. Fire solution ready, Dax said calmly. Thel stared at him. You're going to attack that? Dax looked genuinely confused by the question. It's aiming at us. As though that explained everything. Maybe for humans it did. Captain Ward's eyes never left the target. Hit the glowing sections. Thel blinked. That's your tactical assessment? They're glowing for a reason. Disturbingly. That also made sense. The custodian's core brightened. The pulse was seconds away. Ward raised one hand. Fire. The Nightfall unleashed everything. Rail cannons hammered space with kinetic impacts moving at impossible velocity. Lance batteries carved white lines across the darkness. Missiles erupted outward in controlled swarms. The human ship attacked the ancient machine with absolute commitment. Not hesitation. Not caution. Total aggression. The impact struck the custodian's outer rings. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the ancient structure reacted. Blue light flickered violently across the core. The targeting lock vanished. The pulse failed. Lieutenant Torres shouted in disbelief. We interrupted it. Thel stared at the tactical display. Impossible. The ancient machine slowly rotated toward the nightfall, fully now. Awake. Aware. Interested. And Captain Elena Ward smiled slightly at the screen. Not because they were winning. Because now the monster was paying attention. 700 words. Legendary ending plus HFY emotional finish. The custodian moved. Not quickly. It did not need to. Something that massive operated beyond concepts like speed. The ancient structure rotated fully toward the nightfall, and the stars themselves seemed to bend around it as gravitational distortions rolled outward in silent waves. The tactical displays flickered violently. Several systems failed. One entire sensor wall went dark. And still the human ship kept advancing. Thel could barely process what he was watching anymore. Every instinct born from millions of years of evolutionary survival screamed the same command. Retreat. But the humans aboard the Nightfall behaved differently under pressure. Not calmer. Sharper. More focused. More alive. Captain Ward stood at the center of the bridge with one hand braced against the tactical console while red warning lights pulsed across her face. Status. Lieutenant Dax answered immediately. Outer shell damaged. Whatever that thing is, it has layered defensive architecture beneath the armor. Can we hurt it? Pause. Then. Probably. Thel stared at him in disbelief. Probably? They were discussing attacks against a 12,000-year-old cosmic machine like mechanics evaluating a difficult repair. Another blue pulse began forming inside the custodian's core. Larger this time. The tactical AI screamed warnings across the bridge. Energy buildup exceeding previous parameters. Torres looked up sharply. If that fires, we're dead. Captain Ward nodded once. Then let's not let it fire. Again. That impossible human mindset. Not. We can't survive this. But. Then stop it. The Nightfall accelerated harder. Human engines thundered through the hull as the ship drove directly toward the ancient machine. Thel watched the distance collapse on tactical sensors. 6,000 kilometers. 4,000. 3. The custodian's massive rings began rotating faster now. Blue light spread across ancient structures buried beneath layers of black armor plating. Something inside the machine was waking fully. And suddenly, Thel understood. The custodian was damaged. Not dying. Not weak. But wounded. Ancient scars covered entire sections of the structure. Burn marks. Collapsed armor layers. Fragments torn away by weapons powerful enough to scar civilizations. Something had fought this thing long ago. Something terrible enough to nearly destroy it. Captain Ward seemed to realize the same thing simultaneously. Dax. I see it. The weapons officer enlarged one section of the rotating core. A fracture. It. Running beneath several armored layers. The damage looked ancient. And unfinished. Dax's expression sharpened. That's not battle damage. What is it? It's a containment breach. Silence filled the bridge instantly. Thel felt cold spread slowly through his chest. Because suddenly the name made horrifying sense. Custodian. Not conqueror. Not guardian. Jailer. The machine wasn't protecting something. It was imprisoning something. And after 12,000 years, the prison was failing. The blue core suddenly flared brighter than a star. Tor shouted. Pulse release imminent. The bridge shook violently. Human crews moved instantly. Not panicked. Committed. Captain Ward pointed toward the fracture zone. Everything into that breach. Dax grinned slightly. Gladly. The Nightfall unleashed its entire arsenal. Rail cannons hammered the fracture point relentlessly. Lance weapons carved molten lines across exposed internal structures. Missiles detonated against weakened armor layers in waves of fire and kinetic force. The ancient machine trembled. For one impossible moment. The pulse destabilized. The glowing core flickered violently. And then something happened none of them expected. The custodian spoke. Not through radios. Not through translators. Directly. A voice flooded every system aboard the Nightfall simultaneously. Ancient. Colossal. Exhausted. Containment failure. Imminent. The bridge went still. Even the humans froze. The voice continued beneath layers of static and collapsing machine logic. Cycle duration. Complete. Blue light erupted through the fracture. The machine began breaking apart. Not exploding. Failing. Ancient structures collapsed inward as massive armored rings drifted free into space. Thel stared in horror. Captain? Because behind the collapsing custodian, something else was moving. Something vast. Something alive. Only a fragment became visible through the breach. A shape larger than moons. Hundreds of them opening slowly in the dark. The bridge temperature seemed to vanish instantly. The humans stared at the impossible thing emerging behind the shattered prison. And then Captain Ward did something Thel would never forget. She smiled. Not because she wasn't afraid. Thel finally understood that now. Humans absolutely felt fear. But fear did not end their movement forward. Sometimes, it accelerated it. Ward looked toward her crew. Then toward the impossible thing awakening beyond the broken custodian. Dax, she said quietly. The weapons officer cracked his knuckles once. Yeah, Captain? Ward's eyes remained fixed on the darkness. Call Earth. Pause. Then the final line. Tell them humanity found another nightmare.